Guys, so today I want to show you an autocomplete function of an input field. This field is to get country name. So when you type something in the field, it will use your query, whatever I type, to search through the database or an external API. So let's say I type fr to searching through my database where I have list of countries. So it will return the relevant result that has fr. So when you click, we are entering the list returned from the database. We are entering it here. So when you click on an item on the list, it will autocomplete the input field for you. So I'll start with the Webflow, what I have in Webflow. So first of all, the input field. We have the input field with Wized attribute input countries, and also it has an ID of input countries as well. So the input field is inside the wrapper. That is that encompasses all of them. So the next thing we have is clear input. This icon right here, when you clear it, it's clear everything in the field. So it is hidden now. It is currently hidden. So it has a Wized attribute of clear input. We have country list. Let me show that. That one is also hidden, but let me show it now. So we have country list, and it has Wized attribute of country list wrapper and ID of render div. So I'm coming back to the ID later in Wized, but take note of it. So inside the render div, we have loader. It is displayed absolute so that I can stay on top of everything in the country list. So I have not found is error message. If we make request to the database and it's return an empty result, so the error message that will be shown is this one, not found. So it has Wized attribute of country list error, and it also has an ID. And lastly, we have item we are using to render the list. So inside it we have two text. Country result text and the country code, one for the country name and one for the country code. So if I search, one for the country name and one for the country code. So that's basically everything about the Wized setup. So now the database, we're using Xano. For this tutorial, and I have a list of all the countries in the world in my database. So you can use an external API too. You can fetch from an external API, and we have two fields, name and code. Okay, so this is the endpoint we are using to query our database. There is a custom query I created. So inside the endpoint, we have an input which is connected to this field through Wized, and we have a query or record function in the function stack. Inside the query or record, we have a custom query, and it's using the name field. It's checking. It will use the value of the input to check the name field, and whatever country is relevant to that input, it will return them as a list. So we can run and debug that now. So if I tap GER, it should return list that will include Germany, Algeria, because it has GER, Nigeria. So yeah, that's it about the backend, the database, Xano. So now let's move to Wized. Our Wized setup has 11 actions and a request, 2 variables. So let me start with the request. The name of the request, get countries, and the URL endpoint is the one I customly created. Just copy it here. Is a get method, and we have one URL parameter, and URL parameter filter, which is this input we have in the endpoint. So, and the value is the input field. We are returning the input field as the value to the URL parameter. Okay, now so let's go to the actions. We have 11 actions, but the most important one is this one, the one running the request for us. Is an event based action, so triggered by an attribute present, and is triggered by this attribute, the input field. So we are running this function, this JavaScript code. So by the way, shout out to Xano Gupta for his Wized GPT. I use his Wized GPT to generate this JavaScript code. I will include a link to his GPT in the description. So the code is not complex at all. I was trying my best to explain some part of it. Okay, the first thing in the code is the bounce function, a timeout. It's like a delay. I'll get to that in a bit. So here we have a function to handle input changes. So this function we listening to any action in the input field whenever we type something or we clear something. So, and that function together with the condition in this if statement, that if the input field is greater than or equals to 1, that means if there is something in the input field, then execute this request. And also, if there's nothing in the field, clear the array return from the request, clear it, which means set it to empty. So now, if all those conditions are satisfied, run this request. But before you run it, wait for 300 milliseconds. So this is where the debounce function comes into play. This is where we are using the debounce function. So the reason why I do that is because we don't want to be making requests every time we have an input in the field. You don't want to make a request, although it will be good to make it faster, but because I'm using a free Xano plan, so if you have a paid plan, you can set it to a lower number or 0, so that whenever you type something you get a response almost immediately. So that's why we set a debounce function there, so that it will protect our rate limit. So this code, this one is handling the feasibility of the whole result div, and the condition is that if the input field is not empty, which is this one, that means if the length is greater than 0, that's basically not empty. So display it. And this one is listening to blur events on the input field as well. Okay, let me talk about render div. So we are getting the whole results wrapper. Remember I talked about ID in Webflow when we are working through the Webflow. So the idea of the whole result wrapper is this render div. So the idea of the loader is list loader. So I pass the idea of those elements to GPT to generate the code. Okay, so where are we? Okay, the blur event. So the code is listening to blur events on the input field. So blur event is the opposite of focus. When the field, let me show it. When the field is not in focus, it will hide this whole div. So when the field is not in focus, it will hide it. but I think there's a timeout. Yeah, there's a timeout on that function too, 150 milliseconds. And why we have a timeout is because there is a click event we are listening to on the item in the rendered list. So whenever you click on an item here, we want to listen to that click event. So we don't want to hide this whole div immediately we click on it. So we wait for 150 milliseconds, then it hide it. So that's basically what the whole the core functionality of the code. So because this is a clonable, and if you want to use this component in your project, and maybe some of the ID is not the same with the one I use, so you can change it here. So let me just give you a trick. If you are new to coding, press Command D. Whatever you want to change, let's say for example, want to change the name of this request, get country request. Press Command D, press it again, so it will keep pressing it. It will highlight that name anywhere it is on the code, so you can just edit it all at once. Let's say I want to change it to something else, like get me. So it will, as you can see, it's changing across board. So I think that can be helpful. So that's the end about the code. So let's walk through the rest of the actions. So we are rendering the result to get from the request with this array using this index, this variable for index. Then we are setting the country name, and also we are setting the country code. Yeah, so this action, there's a variable in this project called input value, and this action is an event action, a click event. Whenever we click on this element, country result is the individual item in the rendered list. So individual item here is the one with this attribute, country result. Well, whenever we click on that element, we are setting a variable, and the variable will be the name inside the element. So we are setting it inside that variable, and after we set that variable, we take the input field, then we set the input value to the value of that variable. So that's the basic mechanism of this autocompletion. So the last folder here, function and visibility, we're just handling the visibility of the setup to make everything smooth. This is handling the visibility of this all. I think we have something similar in the code, but this is an overkill. That if the array return is not empty and it has requested, then display it, or else don't display it. This is handling the visibility of the loader, that if the request has been requested and the request is successful, equals 200, and the array returned is not empty. There are so many ways to write if array is not empty. This is one of the way. So return null, that means. So yeah, another way to set visibility is using the display CSS display property. So we are returning none, otherwise return flex. So the no result, if what is returned from the array is empty, so it will display it. Let me type rubbish. So it has been displayed. So the condition is simple. If the array length is empty, if it is 0, so if it is 0, then this return block, which means display it. This is the CSS property. Okay, this one is for this clear input here. This is handling the feasibility, and the condition is very simple, which is if the input field is not empty, show it. If it is empty, don't show it. And the functionality behind it is this action. So whenever we click on it, set the input field to empty, and also set the input value variable to empty. So yeah, so that's it. I hope you find it helpful. So the link to the clonable, the theory part, the Webflow, Wized, and Xano will be included in the description, so you can clone it and play with it, and you can even include it in your project. So thank you so much. If you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much, and you can also connect with me on Twitter. Thank you so much for watching.